I looked into the documents. It talks about sustainable agriculture intensification. I'm sure if Mr. Murakaran will be, will bear me out. How can sustainable agriculture be talk? How can we talk about sustainable agriculture intensification? What does it mean? And if you read the drafts very carefully, what conservation agriculture is coming to, it is actually wanting us to intensify, and that is what we were actually, the problem in agriculture that we face today is because of the intensification of the process of production that we have run into the kind of crisis that we have in this country. So how come, what is this sustainable agriculture intensification that is being promoted through conservation agriculture? I tried to look through the documents, but eventually it narrows down to one thing. It says that India should go in for no tillage as the answer to intensification in sustainable agriculture. Okay, so there is a debate going on. Not many universities are trying to tell us that zero tillage is what we should promote. I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but all I know is India as a country, their earthworm was considered to be the nature's tiller. And they have been tilling the land, as Bhaskar Sabe tells us, that each earthworm in its lifespan turns around 6 tons of soil. One earthworm turns around 6 tons of soil, that means it was in nature's tiller. And in a country where we have the nature's tillers, America does not have earthworms. So please let's not compare ourselves with America. And the agriculture of America does not have earthworms. Now in India, we had earthworms. We were a tropical country. And now, and I thought once you have that, there can't be zero tillage. But we are being told that yes, you must go in for zero tillage. Why? Because there is an industry behind it. And if you look at what industry it is, it's fascinating. Now you farmers are being asked that they need to move on to the laser levelers. These are being imported, and now some components of it being manufactured within India. Then of course you need to have the seeding drills, which would they're called like happy seeders or turbo seeders. These are the two components. Two machines that are already in the market. Then you have to have the rotary seed drills, and then you of course have to have a battery of or a number of herbicides that you also need to use for zero tillage. Now, interestingly, in the last few years, I have done my analysis and found that already 250 companies in India have started manufacturing all these products or these equipments for the farmers. So you replace one set of equipment with another set of equipment. So the farmers will now have to, earlier they were moving on with that kind of tractor hose and all those kind of things. Now they have to move on to these new laser-driven levelers and so on, and along with the multitude of herbicide, pesticides that we need to require for maintaining zero tillage. So there is an industry which is already ready to promote conservation agriculture. So everything that we talk about in agriculture is actually driven with the industrial interest. Now, that is one phenomenon that we see, whether it's conservation agriculture. The other part that, it's very interesting, Planning Commission was the one which was very keen on Jatropha as the fuel oil producing plant. And when this entire debate began, I remember the Planning Commission documents, very optimistic. It said that by 2013, 13 million hectares in the country has to be brought under Jatropha, a biofuel plantation. And everyone is going gaga over it. There were so many companies getting into it. In fact, Planning Commission in 2004 set aside 1,500 crores for ensuring that 5 lakh hectares come under Jatropha in the next 5 years. Now 1,500 crores was for the particular 2004 plan. But if you look at now, the target is to bring in 13 million hectares. The entire thing has been punctured by a FAO report. FAO report has now said that all this expectation from biofuel were actually hyped, and there was no relevant data to support the analysis that the biofuel is really workable, or Jatropha is really workable as a biofuel. Now, globally, people are abandoning biofuel, but the entire analysis in India was accepted because it was accepted. Whatever the industry said, we tend to agree with that. So whatever the industry projects, there were a number of companies which were into Jatropha plantations. So they said, but now in India, we have seen farmers moving out of Jatropha plantation. Now nobody talks about that ambitious target of 13 million hectares that you have to bring in. The Prime Minister, the other day, I remember at one of the Economic Times conference had said some years back, when Mr. Anand Mahindra got up and asked a question, Mr. Prime Minister, what should be a young IMA dreaming of India in the next few years? What should be the kind of economic dream that we must set it to him? And the Prime Minister replied that the IIM graduates should look up to special economic zones that will be the engines of economic growth in the years to come. And I still remember that statement that he made on the Economic Times program. Now, and then of course, we unleashed a program to, or a network, or the efforts to buy land, to acquire land for SEZs all over the country. What has happened to SEZs now? Several years later, we realized that out of the 583 approved SEZs, 202 people have already withdrawn. Many others are now finding out the escape route, how to get out of that. They have been allotted SEZ, but they don't want to get into the SEZ process. That love affair with SEZ has also disappeared. In fact, one of the classical models that the country projected, the Planning Commission approved, and which has failed to deliver is the SEZ. If you look at the export potential also, the figures are actually covering up the truth, and that is that most of what is known as exports are actually not exports, they are actually the sales within the country, because that's what SEZ also allows. Now that is also a camouflage that has been done to project SEZ, but where is that economic promise that the Prime Minister and also the Planning Commission had projected as the way forward for this country? So it is quite strange that we go on with these kinds of industry prescriptions, but all this is actually going to ensure that the country's food security is put at stake, because the more land you buy, the more will be the threat to India's food security. The argument today is, and if you have read Planning Commission documents, it tells us that we need to raise productivity, therefore limit the land requirement. That's the argument that you see. So you can raise your productivity, provide a better price, and it has been going on for many years that the Prime Minister has been saying in the Planning Commission meetings that we need to evolve a kind of a system where the middleman in agriculture is taken away, so the farmer gets a better price, and where the consumer also gets a better price, and indirectly they have been hinting at FDI in retail. Now, FDI in retail has been notified, as you know. Let's also look at this new mantra that the government is trying to push in. And since you will not have much paddy in the days to come, so you don't have to worry about agriculture, but many other states, I'm sure, will have to worry about agriculture. And considering what FDI is, many of you would remember that advertisement on the television. A child runs, it falls in the mud, the mother picks him up and says, "Don't worry, beta, surf excel hai na." Whether it is food stocks rotting, whether it is the farmer committing suicide, whether it is the inflation that we see in this country, government says, "Koi baat nahi beta, FDI inflation, FDI retail aa jayega, to sab kuch ho jayega." So that's the kind of mantra which we have been made to believe is what's going to address all your issues, over the years. But let's look at it. What does FDI retail mean? Walmart is the world's biggest retail company. Walmart comes from America. Walmart has been there for 50 years. They recently celebrated their golden jubilee. Walmart is also such a big player that we would tend to believe that if Walmart was there, the American farmers should have been economically viable by now, or they should be doing very well in their own country. I'm sure you will agree. But if the farmers were doing well, there is no reason why farmers should be quitting agriculture. But over the last 50 years, we find that the population of people in agriculture in America has actually scaled down or come down from 10% in 1950s to less than 1% today. I did my calculations and I did the data search on the USDA database, and I found out that in America only 7 lakh farmers were left on the farm now. So when we talk of agriculture in America, it is the corporations which do agriculture. Only 7 lakh family farms left in America. Now these family farms, I'm sure if we were to believe that, let's say we not only take Walmart's contribution towards increasing farmer income, but we also take the contribution of commodity trading along with Walmart. I'm adding 2 things, not only one. Then the income of the American farmer should have shot up by now. But let's look at what is happening in America. In America, despite Walmart, despite the biggest commodity exchange in Chicago, despite almost every farmer having a computer terminal and also trading in these kinds of commodities, it is sad that we don't realize that the American farmers are alive today, not because of Walmart, but they are alive because the American government pays them agriculture subsidies. Now, there is something called as US Farm Bill. US Farm Bill comes once in 5 years. The last Farm Bill was in 2008. If you look into the US budget, you will not get any inkling of the kind of subsidies they provide to agriculture. But if you have to know what the subsidies in agriculture are, you have to go to the Farm Bill site where you find out USDA site where the Farm Bill is being listed. So this provides in the last 2008 Farm Bill, the next one is going to be 2013, the last Farm Bill provided $307 billion of agriculture subsidy. Much of it was direct income support to farmers. Let me give you a couple of projections for what the subsidy direct income support is to the farmers in America. The argument in India is that in a globalized world, a farmer can only be competitive if he raises his productivity and matches the performance of the best countries. That's the argument. So the more your productivity, the more will be your income. And I have seen at many conferences across the world that we all tend to agree, yes, after all, if a rice farmer in America is producing 7 tons per hectare, and an Indian farmer is producing, that's the average, 3 tons per hectare in India, then I think an Indian farmer has lost out. And so globally he is not competitive, so eventually he has to commit suicide at one stage or the other. That's the kind of thinking. So the argument is that you raise your productivity to that level. Let's look at America. American farmers, American rice farmers produce a crop of $1.2 billion. That's the total output. They produce, the average productivity is 7 tons per hectare. The average productivity in India is 3 tons per hectare. And with 7 tons per hectare, the American farmer cannot survive unless he gets a corresponding subsidy from the government. The American government provides him a subsidy of $1.4 billion to produce a crop of $1.2 billion. Now please tell me, if Indian farmers also raise their productivity to 7 tons, I'm sure you will agree, if the American farmers was not able to survive, how will the Indian farmers survive? Who will give him the corresponding subsidy? At a time when we are being told that subsidies are a drain on the country's exchequer and we need to reduce the subsidies, and these subsidies are primarily in agriculture or for the poor. That's what the target is all about, and you have been listening. We'll comment on later also. But that's one situation of American rice farmers. Now look at the cotton farmers in America. There are, we know the largest area in cotton is in India, and the productivity is very low. Look at America. America has only 20,000 cotton growers. 20,000 cotton growers, they produce a crop, this was my analysis of 2005, they produce a crop which is worth $3.9 billion. That's the total output of cotton in America. They get a subsidy, they survive on a subsidy or direct income support, which is $4.7 billion. So American government pumps in $4.7 billion to produce a crop of $3.9 billion. On top of it, it gives a subsidy of $180 million to the textile industry to buy that subsidized cotton from the farmers. In WTO, this was challenged. This was challenged by Brazil. America lost the case. America lost the case, so under the law it is that Brazil can put countervailing duties to stop imports from America. So America decided to bribe the Brazilian government. It is now providing $147 million of subsidy to the Brazilian farmers instead. Look at it. Very cleverly, they have ensured what we call as efficiency or the competitiveness of a farmer actually is driven by how much support you get from the state. And somehow in India, you get only indirect subsidies through inputs, in India, whereas they get direct subsidies to support their farms. Now, 20,000 farmers, $4.7 billion. I thought, if you do a calculation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, every day they get $12 million as subsidy. So no wonder the cotton farmers of America go on a cruise, and they may be planning to go to the moon also when it opens up for the tourists. But the Indian farmers in Vidarbha or the Western African farmers commit suicide because that entire thing depresses the global prices. It depresses the global prices, as a result of which the Indian farmer is priced out. But the argument of the Planning Commission is that we have to make our farmers competitive, so therefore we need to bring in hybrid crops and so on and so forth. That, of course, another topic. But this argument that this American farmer is very competitive and therefore we need to follow that pattern of agriculture. Also, this argument that Walmart has reduced prices for food commodities in America. The massive subsidies in agriculture, I gave the example of cotton, they actually reduce the prices. It is the subsidies which